Hey, Jeff at Sweet Sounds here, back again with another cool project we just finished up. Been busy this summer, this spring. Bikes, boats, cars, trucks, semis, dump trucks. It's been a busy year. So this project we just finished up was for a local client right around here in the Mankato area, but he keeps his boat over on the river and he wanted some upgrades done to it. This is a 2003 Malibu VLX. So it's a 20-year-old boat with a lot of 20-year-old technology in it, with a couple of upgrades that had been done to it. But the audio system surely wasn't keeping up with today's technology, and they wanted to be able to enjoy this thing. So one of the most important things that we offer here at Sweet Sounds, I personally have owned boats for about 30 years now. So I really consider ourselves experts when it comes to design, engineering, and most importantly, our consultation services to making sure that the audio system that we offer our clients fits exactly what they need. So for example, part of the conversation is always going to be, how are you using this boat? Is it primarily a surfing boat, wakeboard boat, ski boat? Is it primarily a pleasure boat where you're doing a lot of floating around, bringing out the floaties and just enjoying time on the lake? Is it more of a cruiser where you're taking the family and zipping up and down the river, maybe doing some bar hopping or whatnot? So it's always important to us to find out exactly how the customer's using it so we can focus the budget on where it's going to make the most sense for the customer. So for example, they use this boat primarily as a wake surfing, wakeboarding type boat, and in fact most of the time they have a bag in the front of the boat, so they don't have any friends, anybody sitting up there at all. So when we brought up looking at doing some speakers in the bow, they're like, well, obviously we don't need that, so we don't want to focus on something they're not going to make use of. So of course we get much deeper than that when we start going into the details of it all, and most of the time when we do our consultation, we'll ask our clients to bring the boats down. So for example, these guys brought the boat down and it was about the middle of the week, so they left it with us. We went through it, put together an estimate. They actually ended up coming back, grabbing the boat, taking it out for the weekend, and then brought it back to us the next week so we could go ahead and get jamming on the audio system. And that works out very well. We try to be as flexible as we need to be to make sure the customers are getting exactly what they want. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the equipment in here. So this boat came originally with a radio and two speakers, four infinity speakers, and a JBL amplifier. And it looks like it's the original equipment in there, probably from around 2003. Some of it was actually still in pretty good shape. One of the pairs of speakers was shot. I think it had gotten too wet. The amplifier was still functioning pretty well. They wanted a new radio. It had an older Sony radio that just doesn't have some of the capabilities that the new Sony's radios have. So we pulled out the old Sony 70 and we put in the brand new M80. And a couple of things that really set this apart from really any of the other radios out there is the full app control you get when you're using the Sony radios. So on your smartphone, you can download the Sony Music Center app and you can link up directly to the radio. And once you're linked up to it, you actually have control of radio. So for example, when you change the volume in your app, you can actually see the volume control on radio going up. Likewise, you have independent or subwoofer control right from the app, or if you want to use the fader, you can use it right from the app. You don't have to access the radio. And considering where the radio is mounted in this vehicle, that makes even that much more sense. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into there. But this is all part of that critical aspects of talking to the customers and actually getting a chance to look through the boat itself. So original speakers, these Infinities. Oddly enough, one set is in the dashboard still working pretty good, so the customer decided they wanted to retain those at this point in time, no problem. But this set in the back, one of the woofers was out on it. Like I said, I think it got too wet. So we went ahead and pulled those out, and then we put the JBL Stadium 6.5-inch component bridge type tweeter setup to replace those. Excellent sound quality. It's a little bit of an oversized speaker, so we'll talk about what we had to do to get those to fit. And then the tower speakers in here are an interesting kind of a setup. So originally they have these towers that were in there. It's a 6.5-inch, very small kind of a cone on there. Had some old, I don't know, junky kicker speakers in here, it looks like. And then those were mounted to the tower, but they're actually integrated with these light bars. Now the clients were never using that out on the water, so there's really no reason to retain that. These things have old halogen bulbs in them. Even with all these lights, it still wasn't particularly bright, so wasn't any point in retaining those. We pulled out both the towers and the light bars, and then we replaced them with the JBL Tower X Marine speakers. And since there were some wires up there from the old lights, we were able to reuse those, rerouted them a little bit to power up the LEDs on the tower speakers. You can probably see them lit up over there. We'll get to that a little bit closer when we climb into the boat. And then for power, since the original factory amplifier in here is a JBL and we're actually retaining that, we went with a couple of different amplifiers that really fit the bill the best for the particular speakers that we were going with in here. So these JBL Tower X Marine speakers are a 4 ohm impedance speaker, but they have a very low impedance curve to them. So low that most amplifiers will not run these things when you're bridging your amplifier to them. So we went with the Rockford TM 400X4AD. It's a 4-channel amp. Each half of that amplifier is bridged to one of the tower speakers, so it's bridged into a 4 ohm load, so getting plenty of power into those speakers. They sound excellent, and that amplifier is capable of running that load. So it's kind of a critical, not a lot of choices on amplifiers that will run that with a lot of power. And then for the subwoofers, we used the Memphis Extreme Audio 600 watt subwoofer amplifier. That's running 2 of the matching JBL Stadium Series woofers with the SSI selectable impedance voice coils on there. So we're able to match that up to that amplifier perfectly. And this thing sounds absolutely wonderful. So let's go ahead and take a look in the boat. So as I mentioned, this thing's a 2003. Looking at it, you really wouldn't know that. It's in excellent shape. And now the audio system is really capable of keeping up with that. So as you probably noticed in lots of our videos, we do not wear shoes into customers' boats. We want our customers' boats respected just like we want our boats respected. So we're either barefoot or stocking foot when we do our work in these things all the time. So let's go ahead and take a look at the tower speakers right off the bat. As we mentioned, we pulled out the original speakers that were in there, bolted up the new ones, rerouted the wires for the lights so that the LEDs are now functional off that. And since we used the original wiring, we're actually able to use one of the original switches on the dashboard to turn those on and off. Now, one thing we get asked a lot are, what are these here for? And those are actually a safety chain to keep this speaker from falling all the way down in case of a catastrophic kind of accident. Let's say if this boat was able to get hit, or I don't know, you run into ground at high speed, and there's a lot of weight on this thing. These things are not lightweight. And what this does, if this whole bracket here was to break, this bolt here is part of the structure of the tower speaker itself. And if this was to break up above there, this safety rope will actually keep that from falling all the way and bouncing around inside the boat and hitting people in the head and things like that. So that's exactly what those are for. Like I said, a lot of people ask us about those, and the manufacturers make them available. We find it important to make sure those are always used. Much rather be safe than sorry. Of course, those are stainless steel and everything is weather resistant, corrosion resistant. So you never have to worry about them fading or corroding or rusting or anything else like that. So great looking speakers, blend in super well with this particular boat. So let's go ahead and look at the rest of it. So down here is where that pair of Infinity speakers were. We removed those. And those original speakers, they call them 6.5s, and they call the Stadium speakers 6.5s. But the Stadiums are probably closer to 7 inches, and the original speakers were probably closer to 6 inches. So we had to expand these holes in order to get these to fit. A pretty tight fit once you size it all out. There's actually about 1.5 inch thick aluminum bar at the top of that and at the bottom of that bracket. So we had just barely enough room to resize those holes to get these speakers to fit in there, but we wanted to put the best speakers in there we could, get as large as possible in there. So when we enlarge those, we don't just use an air saw or a jigsaw and hack it all up. We actually use a circle template, and then we use a router bit with a pattern bit on that, on a router, and we route those out so it's a perfect circle when we're all done. We then mount the speaker into there with a gasket, stainless steel fasteners once again all the way around, so those things will last as long as this boat's ever going to be on the water for. Excellent quality, fit, finish is top notch, and they look perfect. Now let's go ahead and talk about the dashboard over here and the factory amplifiers and the subwoofers and everything else. So right off the bat, let's talk about the voltmeter that we put in here, and we put in a lot of other boats. So this is a dual purpose item. It is both a voltmeter that keeps tabs on the stereo battery in here, and it is a dual output USB 3.0 quick charge device, so you can plug in a phone and a tablet or whatever else you want to keep charged. Everybody, and I mean everybody, has at least one smart device with them these days, if not two or more. If they're bringing a tablet, maybe to read a book while everybody else is out wake surfing and things like that. So that's a very nice item to have, and it also allows you to keep tabs on where your battery's at if you end up pulling up to the sandy beach and just jamming on the stereo for a while to know where you're at on that. So the radio in here is in kind of a unique location. So as you can kind of see where I'm sitting here, the radio is actually tucked underneath the armrest to the right side of the driver. Obviously that's not a particularly nice place to make any adjustments while you're also trying to drive the boat. So that's where that Sony Music Center app comes in. You can take your phone, mount it wherever you want to and access that, or you can be in the passenger seat and access to that, or in the bow of the boat or the back of the boat, wherever you want to, and access that via the app. So that works out very slick. And in addition to that, there is a secondary controller also that we can volume up, volume down, change the sources, change the tracks on. It gives us some basic control right from the dashboard. Very easy to access, much easier than trying to flip up the cover for this radio and access the radio there. So as I mentioned, we were able to reuse this switch right here for the tower lights. So we'll pop back here, see those are off, and then they're on, and then they're off, and then they're on. That's all done right off the switch here. It's nice not having to put any extra switches or controllers around in there. On top of that, underneath here, I'm just going to kind of swing the camera down. So the factory amplifier actually used to reside right over there. Now, I'm not a fan at all of having amplifiers scattered all over in boats or cars or trucks or anything else, because the likelihood of picking up noise, and I mean a lot of noise, is greatly higher when you have multiple different ground paths and multiple different lengths of runs and things like that. So we took that amplifier out, we rerouted some wires, extended things we need to extend, and we put all three amplifiers into one location. And while we were at it, there was some other excess wire and zip ties and a bunch of other crap in here, so we went through and cleaned that all out, so that's all nice and clean. And I should mention, front speakers are the original speakers, actually in the dashboard of this boat. So those are still working well. The customer wanted to retain those, so we did. And of course, the Sony radio does make use of a wireless remote control. So you got the wireless remote control, you got your app control, you got your extra remote controller, and then you have the radio itself. So pretty much limitless control of that. Now let's talk about the subwoofers a little bit in here. So this boat, when it came in, did not have any bass in it at all, and the customer wanted bass. These guys loved their music, and we wanted to make sure we gave them an excellent experience. So when we first brought it in and we looked this over, we knew we could fit a 10-inch woofer underneath that panel by itself. And this panel used to run straight across here, right? Like this woofer would not have fit. The smaller woofers would have fit, but this used to run straight across here, about an inch lower, and it didn't have that curve to it at all. But we wanted to get into the larger stadium speakers because they're more capable, they handle the power better, they sound better, all around. They're just flat out a better speaker. So what we did was we removed that entire panel here. So this panel, this whole thing came out, and we pulled the vinyl piping off. So the piping is this back little thin piece right here. Maybe I'll flip this up so you can see that a little bit better. Piping is this thin little piece here. We removed the piping. That was probably 40 staples in that. And then we removed the vinyl, which is, of course, the vinyl here, and the foam underneath that. That was probably another 50 or 60 staples holding all that in. Of course, everything is a stainless steel staple, so we pulled all those out. And then we took the measurement that we had put on the front of this thing. We had a measurement right here for this circle, half circle, and we transferred that to the back of that board, which oddly enough does take a little bit of time to transfer that and have it absolutely perfect. And we don't have a lot of room to miss on this. It's going to stand out like a sore thumb if the speaker doesn't have the same gap all the way around it. So we transferred that to the back, and then we ran that through on our router table to get a perfect circle cut out of that thing. And then we rewrapped the foam, then we rewrapped the vinyl, and then we restuck the piping on the outside of it. Once again, stainless steel staples all the way through. And that gave us enough room to fit these stadium speakers absolutely perfectly. And I'm going to go ahead and bring the camera down here a little bit. And you can see how these gaps all the way around on that speaker and on that other one. The other one's kind of a ways away from the camera, so it's a little harder to make sense of. But the gap on these speakers all the way around is absolutely the same. So that worked out absolutely perfect. Very happy with that. I know the customer is going to love these things. They originally actually wasn't that it didn't have any woofers in it. What it had was that kind of a portable powered subwoofer that was originally inside of the cavity over here, and it had actually fallen off the wall and was bouncing around, and the cables were all busted up on it. So we got that all out of here and put together a really true subwoofer solution, and this thing sounds amazing. Now on the subwoofers, they do use this compartment for storage. They wanted to make sure the woofers were not going to get damaged on the backside here. So we've done this on a couple other boats before. We take some of our expanded PVC, we run it through our CNC machine, and we cut this nice honeycomb pattern into it. We then adhere those pieces together, and then we mount that whole thing into the boat here. And you can actually grab this thing, and you can shake the whole boat with it. It is very, very, very solid. So the customers can just take all their stuff that they're used to throwing in there and not have to worry about damaging the woofer. It's really important. You never want something sitting on the back side of one of those cones while the woofer's playing. That's like a nightmare scenario. You're going to launch cones really quick doing that. And of course, there's wiring that runs to those too. So this really protects everything. It's more or less a cage back there, but it's a smooth cage, and it has plenty of ventilation so that we don't have any restrictions on the air movement coming off of those woofers. Works out really, really well. Of course, everything we do here, when it comes to marine, when it comes to motorcycles, when it comes to side-by-sides, everything we use is going to be corrosion resistant. We don't use any steel at all on these things. Everything, we don't use any wood, any MDF. Everything we use these days, fiberglass, plastics, aluminum, stainless steel, and some other composites to be able to do these jobs. So we know when we do this, the materials that we build this out of are going to be fine for the life of this boat and probably many lives after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the amplifier rack in here. As I mentioned, that's the original JBL. I think it was a model, maybe like a P80 or something like that. 4-channel amp, was working fine, so what the heck, let's go ahead and make use of it. It was fine running the original factory speakers, so we retained that running the front speakers and the new JBL Stadiums that ended up going in the back. You can see the very nice, neat, clean wiring. Got 4-gauge wire feeding this whole rack. We've got a couple distribution blocks up there on the top left-hand side. Once again, stainless steel fasteners, cable clamps, screw down zip ties holding everything in place, so that works out very well. And then we got the Rockford amplifier and the Memphis amplifier. Had to pull that vent pipe out of there while we did our work. We got that all mounted back up and secured, so that works out very well. And of course, there is a main fuse at the battery. It's kind of hard to see, it's kind of tucked back there, but you can just kind of see the tip of it sitting back there. So that's the main fuse for the battery for the audio system that was down in here. So that is, I think, plenty of talking. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on and take a listen to it. So it actually sounds pretty good even with this compartment all open, but it definitely sounds best with the compartment all closed up. So let's go ahead and put this seat back in place where it belongs. And then we will go ahead and take a listen to this. So, and let's go ahead and take a peek real quick. You can see just how perfect of a fit. All of that is just the right amount of room. We're not rubbing on any of the seats. We're not rubbing on the back of the seat that flips down here. Really nice, neat. I'll be able to use it for whatever storage they want to without any issue at all. Now, we're gonna go ahead and jam on this stereo, and the smart device I'm using for this recording will notice that the audio has gotten very loud, and it automatically kicks into concert mode. So it'll get louder and louder and louder, and then oddly enough it gets quieter, and because the device doesn't want to get overloaded. So that's what you're going to notice as soon as I start really turning this thing up. So let's go ahead and get some music playing here, and we will take a listen to this thing. Move around a little bit. So
Back to when we felt like this was forever. Can I take you there? Like it was the first time. Do you remember? Can I take you take you there?
this thing sounds absolutely beautiful. Plenty of output, great quality, and that's gonna pop up and get jamming right away. So let's go ahead and turn it down. And that's enough to be able to talk. So that is another wonderful marine audio installation by the experts here at Sweet Sounds, Mankato, Minnesota. If you are looking at getting some work done in your boat, your pontoon, your side-by-side, your Harley Davidson, your other motorcycles, of course cars, trucks, SUVs, semi-tractors, dump trucks, RVs. Another big thing that we do a lot of video in those things also. Give the experts here at Sweet Sounds a call, 507-345-8863. We'd love to talk to you about the project you want to get done. Check out some of our other projects we've done on our website, sweetsounds.com, and I will go ahead and throw in a couple of photos and maybe some little quick little videos of some of the parts that were crafted during the installation of this audio system. So take care, drive safe, enjoy.